Hi, my name is Alex Johnson. I'm a wedding photographer based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and today I wanted to compare the shots coming out of my M6 and my M11 using the same 50mm Leica lens. So I've been shooting film for a long time, so much so that my first SLRs were film, my first real cameras were film, and when I started shooting professionally, I held on to film because digital sensors just weren't there in terms of dynamic range. I'm talking your original 5Ds, but somewhere around 2017, 2018, I noticed things started to change. Digital had, in my mind, passed the final hurdle, which was dynamic range. So the way I went about conducting this test is building a little rig of sorts. It's essentially a rail mounted on a tripod, and both cameras are mounted on that rail. Before I start, I wanted to go over a few things. The purpose of this exercise wasn't really to get down into the nitty-gritty of every little detail that differs between the M11 and film. It really was more to see the overall look and appeal. Does film have a certain allure, a certain specialness about it that is different from digital? Is it something that really is unique to that medium? Alright, so this is the first image I shot, and it really stood out to me. If not for the differences, for the similarities. Obviously, we're using the same lens here, and so it looks just incredibly similar on a smaller screen. It's not until you start to zoom in that you notice some differences. I have the film image here on the left, and of course you can see a little bit more grain. The image from the M11 here, the transitions are a little bit smoother and the background's a little bit smoother, and I think that has more to do with just noise performance than it does anything else. So of course that made me want to take things a little bit further, and I grabbed more of my son's toys. Again, looking at these two images in the smaller form, I think they look pretty darn close. There's some differences in colors, of course. Those reds are really popping on the film, and that was something that I struggled to get right in the digital files. Another image I'll show in a little bit had this same issue, where I just saw those reds pop, and this could really honestly lead to some of film's appeal for some people. So I wanted to make sure to incorporate images that featured a little bit more contrast, a little bit more low-key or high-key lighting. These are from a series I'm working on. They're photographs of my father's workshop. I was especially blown away by these two here. Again, tones, colors, slightly different, but the overall feel of these images is very different. There is just this kind of transition here that is a little bit more milky, I guess the word you could use. The fall off just seems more pleasant. I don't think it has much to do with the color. They're as close as I could get them for the time I had. But honestly, this one I do see a difference in. Looking at the details, it's hard to believe which is which. Imagine my surprise when I realized that the image on the left was actually from the M11, and the film image is the image on the right. This one really kind of threw me for a loop. So looking at the negative before any adjustments have been made, as you can see in the Lightroom panel here, all I did was take my exposure down a stop and my blacks down about 50, and it really gives you a startling result. Matching that again with the digital, and I think they pair up quite nicely. So doing the same with the digital file, you'll notice here I really haven't made that many adjustments either. Like I said, I haven't touched the colors or the profile, and all I've really done is made a small S-curve here and dropped the blacks while pushing the whites and shadows just slightly. So of course I want to talk about dynamic range. Looking at the two images on the left, the M11 on the top, the film image on the bottom, the detail in the shadows is remarkable in both. I wouldn't give an edge to either one. If we look at the right here for the corrected images, again, they're both showing absolutely beautiful detail, just enough in the shadows, and if I didn't already know, I'd be hard-pressed to tell you which is which. So another thing I wanted to talk about was vignetting and distortion. Vignetting doesn't get corrected in Lightroom on a digital M body, so that's not really an issue. You can correct them identically. As far as distortion, putting a lens profile on the 50mm APO-Summicron hardly changes a thing. It pushes in the barrel distortion by maybe 0.05. That's it. So no lens corrections or sharpening is applied on either image. So here's another image which shows what film can do with reds. The image on the right is Portra400, as all of these have been, but when you compare it directly to the one on the left, I tried my best with white balance, with color shifts, everything to match these two. It was really hard to do. I wanted to see the difference between sharpness and any distortions that the lenses might have when shot on one medium versus the other. They look pretty dang similar to me. So finally, I just wanted to see how they both performed in quote-unquote great light. I was out earlier in the day for the rest of the photos. It was kind of a mix of overcast and sun, so I hiked back out in the evening into the wilderness to see how the differences stood out. Immediately looking at these, I can tell the film photo is on the right, the digital is on the left. They started to get a signature for me, and probably you too as you go along with me here. But the one on the right, and film photos in general, for me, they have this certain unspeakable quality. It's almost like you can reach in and grab a fistful of the image. Whereas the digital photo, it always, it may be, as beautiful as it may be, it just lacks something and it's intangible. This can, of course, be tweaked, moved, misshapen, readjusted to make it look however you want. But there is just this inexplainable quality that film can have sometimes, not all the time, that really keeps it in my camera bag, keeps it in my hands, and keeps me shooting. Back in the day, like 2006, 2007, when I was shooting mostly film was the answer if you needed a wide dynamic range. It really benefited from the fact that you could overexpose most color negative films by 2 to 3, 4, even 5 stops and still get usable results, giving you full dynamic range in the shadows and full dynamic range in the highlights. This is something I noticed is absolutely no longer an issue. Granted, this is on 35mm format. I have shot extensively on medium format film, and so saying this even surprises me a little bit. But the dynamic range of the M11 really makes film shot for the purpose of dynamic range a moot point. So after all this, I would love to know what you guys think. Are you shooting film? Are you shooting digital? Do you shoot both like me? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much. Bye.